kol haaretz shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. I will sing unto God a new song. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are so blessed to be joined by Cantor Evan Kent this evening, direct from Jerusalem. Cantor Kent has been our artist in residence for this month, and he will be joining us this evening. He made Aliyah with his husband Don Gore about 13 years ago and now serves as faculty at the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem and also serves a congregation in Milan. He was the cantor at Temple Isaiah in Los Angeles for 25 years, and we are so happy to have him join us. So I turn you over to Cantor Kent.
It's such a joy to be here with you as we continue to welcome Shabbat. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim. Shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are so grateful to have you joining us for this Shabbat, and especially with our dear, incredible artist in residence who's been with us this whole month of March, Cantor Evan Kent. So good to see you. I think back to years and years ago, almost 30 years ago, when I was a student at the Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles and had the privilege of getting to know you, Cantor Kent, and your husband, Rabbi Don Gore, and your wonderful, warm welcome to my wife, Amy, who was an intern at Don's Synagogue in Tarzana, and feeling so blessed to get to know you all those many years ago, and remembering wonderful times that we've shared together when I've had the privilege of visiting you and Don in Jerusalem. And we're so grateful to have you as part of our month of celebration of storytelling here at Temple Bethel. I love to tell stories. My family often will complain that my stories take too long to tell, but what can I do? I never want to leave anything out. I want them to know all the details. I want everything that led up to whatever the episode is, the story that I want to tell, I want to share with them. You know, each of us is created in the image of God. Implanted within each of us is what the rabbis call a nikud, a kernel, a period almost of God's essence that kind of makes us exactly who we are. It's what gives us our spark, our light, and our spirit. And there are occasions when that nikud is so full of life and experience, it overflows. If we don't share what's happening inside, we feel like we're going to burst. I remember years ago when I won the Wexner Fellowship, this very competitive scholarship and fellowship that I was given to enjoy during my years at rabbinical school. It was very competitive. I didn't think I had a chance in the world to be able to get this fellowship. And it was during exams. And I couldn't find anyone to tell. My roommates were all in the library. I called my mom and dad. No one picked up the phone. I called Amy. She was at school. Couldn't find anybody around. The campus was pretty well shut down because everyone was busy preparing for exams. Finally, it was the day I had to hand in my thesis. I was at the campus print shop and I told the woman who worked at the campus print shop, I got the Wexner Fellowship. And she's like, that's very nice for you. There's times where you just want to share what happens. You want your experience, your ideas, your thoughts, your beliefs, your opinions, your yearnings, your dreams. It needs to come out. We want it to flow out of us. We want it to flow into others that we love. We want our experience of life to be part of their experience. And the Holy One is like that. God is like a fountain, constantly overflowing with light and energy and love. And tradition calls that the Shefa. It calls it a flow of spiritual energy. To open ourselves to that flow is to find our hearts and our minds and our souls open to the stories, to the ideas, the wisdom that God is trying to tell us. And that truth, that wisdom that flows from those stories, that comes from that effervescence of what God has to share, we call this Torah. Each of us is created in the image of that God. And so when we let our stories overflow, that's our Torah. When those narratives, when those expressions of our deepest held convictions or beliefs or experience come pouring out of us, that same process of revealing our inner selves is the same process of what God revealed to us at Sinai. And so we weave together when we engage in real storytelling, our Torah and the Torah of our sages and the Torah of the Holy One into this grand flow of light. And that light will illumine the path that we seek to find in our lives. That light will illumine the places of darkness that sometimes fill our souls. That light will be what becomes the beacon for figuring out how to be the best expression of our most authentic selves. We wish you all Shabbat Shalom, and we're so excited to share not only this month of storytelling, but also this Shabbat of storytelling with you as well. It's now my privilege to welcome our bar mitzvah, Preston Gormandy, and his parents to lead us in the celebration of kindling the Shabbat candles.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us.
As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher keshanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Thank you, Preston. And now it's my privilege to welcome our bat mitzvah, Mia Farber, and her parents to lead us in the celebration of Kiddush.
The heaven and the earth were finished in all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done.
And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hinhilanu, zikaron le'maseh b'reshit, ki hu yon tehila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher litzia mitzrayim, ki vanu v'harta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Now we take the time to welcome the ministering angels of God's holy court, the storytellers that seek to relate God's stories to us through the gift of Torah and our inner souls, as we welcome them with the words of Shalom Aleichem in the spirit of rest and holiness and renewal of this Shabbat.
When I was a cantorial student at the School of Sacred Music at Hebrew Union College in New York City, I loved my classes, but one of the best parts of my student time at Hebrew Union College was my student internship, my student pulpit. It was at a small congregation on the South Shore of Long Island. And one of the best parts about this job was the pianist, the music director. Her name was Claire Berman, and she was a little tiny woman with little tiny hands, but she could play almost anything. And she gave me so much music. She gave me music for Rosh Hashanah, for Yom Kippur, for Friday evening and Saturday morning. She would take songs in Yiddish and arrange them for my own voice, songs in Ladino. I have music that no one else has. And I always wondered, how could I repay Claire? So one day I was in the music library at the college, and there's this big cardboard box filled with music, old books and manuscript and like torn pieces of music, and I was going through it, and the librarian said, well, take what you want, we're just going to toss it. And I was going through the box, and I found a piece of music that I saw was a Shalom Aleichem. And I thought, this would be great to share with Claire. And at the top of the page, there was something written in Yiddish. I don't read Yiddish, I don't speak Yiddish. I could tell it was Yiddish, but I thought, I'm going to share this with Claire because she has never, ever seen this. So I called up Claire and I said, Claire, I wonder if we could meet a few minutes before the service on Friday night. I have something I want to share with you. Now, when Claire wanted to make a point, she would always wear these reading glasses. And when she wanted to make a point, she would pull the glasses down to the tip of her nose and sort of gesture at you, just like this. So I walked into the sanctuary, and Claire was warming up with her little hands playing amazing scales and etudes on the piano. And I sat down next to her on the piano bench, and I opened up my briefcase and I put out this piece of music. And I said, Claire, look at this. I think we should sing this tonight. This is a Shalom Aleichem. And she looked at the music, and she looked at me, and she looked at the music again, and she looked at me, and then she began to cry. What's the matter, Claire? I thought this would be a great piece to sing tonight. Evan, let me read for you. Let me read for you what it says at the top of the page. It says, this Shalom Aleichem was sung by Tessie Werlinski, who says that her father, a rabbi in Odessa, Russia, sang it to her every Friday night. Evan, Tessie Werlinski was my mother. And that rabbi, of course, was my grandfather. And on that Friday night, the Shabbat angels from Odessa, Russia, came and sang with the Shabbat angels at my student congregation on the South Shore of Long Island. And this is what they sang. Oi, 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 Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hashoires, Malachi Elyoin, Mimelech Malchi Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bachem L'Shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyoin, Malachi Elyoin, Mimelech Malchi Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzechem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Bochem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Please rise as we continue with the Baruch Hu.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yalalai-dai-dai, 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 yalalai-dai-dai. Adonai, Am
Please be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chochma potech she'arim, uvidvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazemanim, umisader et hakochavim, v'mishmaratehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות ומשפטים אותנו לימדת, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו, קומנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, נגע יומם ולילה. באהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
The Kotzker Rebbe asks, why in the Shema does it say that you should put these blessings alevavecha, on your heart and not in your heart? And he answers, because we need to know that the words of God are always in proximity of our heart. There might be moments when we are not equipped to take in God's words, but if they sit right there, then we will be able to take them into our hearts when we are ready. We continue with the words of the Shema.
If you are able, please rise. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated as we join in the words of Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha ub'chol nafshecha ub'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Please be seated.
Growing up, it was the music of Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie that my father loved so much. Those songs were so interesting to me because they weren't like what was on the radio. Their songs told stories of historical figures who had tried to make the world a better place, or their songs took protests of what was broken and tried to use their music to make it better. A few days ago, I watched the brand new documentary on Billie Eilish, a young and coming singer. And her songs reflect much more the internal pain that is inside of her and that resonates so much with her young audience. I think about that as we go into the Micha Mocha. There is the writ large story of pain. The Micha Mocha reminds us, like Woody Guthrie, that God moved us from a broken world to a whole world, from bad things to good things, from slavery to freedom. But if we look at the Micha Mocha on a more personal level and put our pain in the words as we sing it, all of a sudden we realize we have a 3,000-year-old lesson, a 3,000-year-old story of how we can move from slavery to freedom in a world at large and inside our own selves. We continue with the words of Micha Mocha.
Elim Adonai, mi kamocha, netabat kodesh, nohora tehilot, ohosei, fele, nohora tehilot, ohosei, fele, malchutecha rahuvanecha, bokei ayam lefnei Moshe uMiriam, zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai, yimloch, leholam vahed. Adonai, yimloch, leholam vahed. Lai, 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 ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. From our song of freedom, Micha Mocha, we move to our song of rest, of evening repose, Hashkivenu. And when I sing Hashkivenu, I imagine that those angels, the Shabbat angels from Shalom Aleichem, they accompany us as we sing Hashkivenu, and they extend their big angel wings, and they shelter us with peace. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת, סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת, סוכת שלומך. יאללה לה יאללה לה יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה לה יאללה לה לה יאללה לה 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 ופרוס עלינו סוכת, שלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
The structure of our week, 6 days of work followed by Shabbat, gives our week a natural narrative structure. From Saturday evening all the way into Friday afternoon, we are building and building and building and building in the week. And for those of you who ever tried preparing for Shabbat, preparing for a festival, you know that those final hours as you're getting ready, you're running, you're shopping, you're cleaning, you're baking, you're cooking, you're doing all of those things so that when Shabbat comes in, we can have the rest and the resolution that a climax offers in any story. We've come to that moment in our week on this Friday evening as we have entered into Shabbat. And so in celebration of that climax and the resolution, we sing the words of Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית העולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית העולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We take that deep breath. We take in the feeling that is Shabbat. And we rise to our feet, standing before the Holy One, standing with ourselves to say we are here to pour out our hearts. We are here to welcome the wisdom of our tradition. We are here to pray. Please rise for the Amidah.
Adonai, Sifatai tiftachu fi tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagado, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher chasdei avot v'imahot, U'mevii geula livnei pneihem, Lema'an shemo be'ahava, Melech ozer, U'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol, Atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashen, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishnei afar, Michamocha pa'al givurot, Umido melach, Melech memit u'mechaye, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'neman atah lahachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
Each week we write our story. But at this point in our prayer life, at this point in the Amidah, at this point in the service, we have a moment to imagine what the next chapter might bring. A writer thinks about where the characters have come. What have they experienced? What have they seen? What emotions have they felt? What have they learned to fear? What have they overcome? And they think forward into the next chapters. What will the next chapters of this character's life bring for them? On Shabbat, when we get to the moments of silent prayer, we have the time to do just that for ourselves. What have we accomplished this week? What brought us joy and satisfaction? What made us be fearful? And what is the work that was left undone to be done in the week or the weeks to come? And so as we take a few moments now for silent prayer and meditation, as we continue that opening of our hearts to the Holy One, we continue to write the words of our story, imagining what might come next.
Elohai nitzor l'shanim merwa, U'sfatay medaber merma, V'lemkalela nafshi tidom, V'nafshi kefala kol tihyeh Elohai. Elohai nitzor l'shanim merwa, U'sfatay medaber merma, V'lemkalela nafshi tidom, V'nafshi kefala kol tihyeh Elohai. Elohai nitzor l'shanim merwa, U'sfatay medaber merma,
ולקללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כפל הכל תהיה אלוהי, אלוהי. פתח ליבי, פתח ליבי, פתח ליבי, בתורתך. ניצור לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה, ולקללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי, אלוהי. אלוהי ניצור לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה, ולקללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי, אלוהי. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני, אדוני, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי.
Shabbat Shalom. It's such a joy to be here and to share my stories and my love of storytelling with all of you. We Jews have often been referred to as the people of the book, but we're really the people of the story. All the great episodes in the Bible, the Talmud, the Midrash, they're really great stories. The entire Torah begins as if we're telling a great story, maybe the greatest story ever told. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Once upon a time in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Ve'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu ve'choshech al pnei tehom ve'ruach Elohim mirachefet al pnei hamayim. The earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water. Even our holidays, for example, Purim just a few weeks ago, is told with a great story, the scroll or Megillah of Esther. Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh, Achashverosh, hamolech mehod uve'al kush, sheva v'esrim u'mea midina. Once upon a time, it happened in the days of Achashverosh, that Achashverosh who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. And of course, very soon, we will be telling the story that we tell and retell while we sit around the Seder table. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. Once upon a time, tell us, why is this night different from all other nights? Again and again, we tell these stories that transport us to different places and different times. And although as Jews there are stories told just to entertain, more often the stories are told with a message, a lesson, a concept to be shared. This is the blessing of Jewish stories, and this is the blessing of Jewish storytelling. Master storyteller Pernina Schramm tells us that in our tradition, we basically have three types of Jewish stories. Stories that are rabbinic or Talmudic, stories that are folklore, mythical creatures, magical situations. And then there are the life stories, when the storyteller shares with you a part of his or her life. And although all cultures have a tradition of oral transmission through storytelling, our telling of stories intermingled with the learning of faith and the sharing of traditions is really unparalleled in other Western civilizations. But why do we tell stories? Why do we tell stories? Why do we listen to great grandma tell us of the old country and her experiences in Poland while she's standing next to us in the kitchen making latkes? Why do we sit in Seder and listen to retelling of perhaps our greatest story, the story of Passover, and feel like it's the first time we're hearing it? Why? Because a good story bridges the intellectual and the experiential. A good story allows us to share a strong and often emotional message for those willing to hear it. When great grandma tells us of poverty in Poland in 1900, it's not just a story about Poland. It's a story about overcoming your past, your poverty, your immigration, and making a new life. You feel the cold, the hunger, and the miserable conditions. Stories can also make the complicated a little easier. For example, in Judaism, when something is missing from an episode in Torah, we know that the rabbis write midrashim, midrash, stories that help us fill in the blank. So here's a very, very short midrash about the story of Noah. In the story of Noah, one of the questions we always ask is, well, what about Mrs. Noah? What did she do? What was her name? And we learn from the midrash that Naamah was Noah's wife. And why was she called Naamah, which means pleasant or pleasing? Because her deeds were pleasing and pleasant. And when you think about it, of course she was pleasant. She had no other choice, with hundreds of animals on the ark, all needing to be fed, watered, cleaned, and washed. And like all wonderful Jewish stories, what do we learn from this short midrash? First, we share the story to remind us that it wasn't just about Noah. His wife had a very important job, and whether she is listed in the Torah with a name, she was significant. Also, our questions and our perspective have power. We can ask questions and then expand our traditions. And finally, we know that revelation wasn't just at Sinai. We create our own Torah with our own stories. The amazing thing about stories, and as I shared with you this midrash, I took you back to pre-ancient times, and you saw Noah, and you saw Naamah, and you saw the ark and the animals. And that's the amazing thing about storytelling, whether it be a book, a movie, a song, or me telling you a story. We open ourselves to the person sharing the story. And even when we know the story isn't true, we can't stop the very emotional part of our brain from thinking it's true. This is one reason when we go to the movies and it's a horror film, we yell at the screen, no, go the other way, don't go back into the house. The stories I tell are those stories I referred to as life stories. These stories are our own personal tales about who we are deep down, where we come from, how we got there, and maybe, just maybe, what it all means. Like any memoir, my storytelling should also come with a label or a disclaimer in bold letters. The story that I tell about myself is only based on a true story. In my story, I am a figment of my own imagination. And even if my stories are mostly true with a little embellishment or a little creative fiction, that doesn't make them any less significant. My stories come from my memory and my experience, and my memory, like your memory, is often unreliable. Just when I was a cantor, I considered it a true blessing to tell and retell the stories found in Torah. It is also a blessing for me to share my stories with you. When I tell my personal stories, I ask you to go on a journey with me into my past, to meet my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. As a storyteller, a singer, an actor, a cantor, I have this distinct blessing to be able to bring to life my ancestors, great-grandparents who died when I was a child, a grandfather I first met when I was 25 years old. As a storyteller, I have the blessing to be able to share with you glimpses of my ancestors' lives, who were very much like your ancestors. And here's the secret. They were not remarkable people. They were very ordinary. They worked, they came home, they ate dinner, they listened to the radio. Years later, they watched a little television. They went to sleep and did it all over again for years, for decades, for generations. But I have the blessing of being able to exhume them, to give voice to their hopes, their dreams, their disappointments, their challenges. In my stories, my grandparents and great-grandparents become the most extraordinary people in the world. And here's another secret. I know my grandparents and great-grandparents better since they died than when they were alive. As a storyteller, I tell stories that are uniquely personal, but at the same time, I'll make sure that you also know these people. Together, by telling and listening to stories, we travel the world, we meet new people, we expand our horizons, and we create our own Torah. Never underestimate the significance the power of our stories have. They have the power to change us and to change our lives. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Cantor Kent, for that extremely moving and beautiful Devar Torah and all that you've given with us to Temple Bethel during your month as our artist in residence. At this time, we turn our thoughts now to those in need of healing. Misha berach avotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Leah v'Rachel. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, send your blessings of healing to those in our families, those in our community, and around the world who are in need of your special blessing of healing on this Shabbat. We add in our prayers tonight Daniela Acuna, Samuel Agranal, Jim Alexander, Perry Bear, Clifford Bailey, Fred Belkin, Dennis Berg, Judy Blackman, Margie Berman Block, Kathleen Bowersox, Monica Butchnick, Gabrielle Duval, Lynn Edinger, Arnold Erne, Estelle Erne, Eileen Feinerman, Rhonda Findlay, Jerry Fine, Marty Fromowitz, Stephen Furman, Ruth Goldberg, Jake Goldstein, Marilyn Graff, Keith Hammer, Bob Isaacson, Michelle Cahan, Dina Katz, Kristen Kay, Florence Koish, Bruce Colliden, Matana Batsarachana, Mickey Cutler, Leah Batrivka Golda, Brad Levine, Jessa Martins, John McMath, Josie Middleman, Victoria Nelson, Elle Niles, Cheryl Ornstein, Rabbi Jim Perman, Esther Poritz, Melissa Rose, Ernie Rosenfeld, Eileen Rosenbaum, Alan Rosenfeld, Ellie Roth, Reuven Moshe Bat Shoshana, Ruth Moria Bat Shoshana Miriam, Bonnie Schaefer, Barry Shapiro, Shani Batsara, Len Sirowitz, Mickey Sirowitz, Mark Sosin, Herbert Spilka, Lawrence Spitz, Michael Sprinzen, Norton Sternick, Hannah Tolsis, Tova Bat Esther, Audrey Weinberg, Summer Westerberg, Jeff Wissot, Israel Yamuter, and David Zensky. We give thanks to God for the gift of God's presence as God leads them to a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, healing of body and a healing of spirit, along with all those who may be ill. May healing come speedily, and together we say, Amen.
Those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Please rise as we continue with the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shameach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula le'yotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu
Please be seated.
As Cantor Kent shared with us with such eloquence, our memories and our stories give us glimpses of ancestors, of those with whom we shared our lives and those that paved the path of our journeys. And so as we turn our thoughts to those whom we remember on this Shabbat, we call them to mind and hear the stories of their lives continue to resonate in our hearts and in our spirits. On this Shabbat, we remember Bertha F. Aronson, Joseph Aronson, Edwin Benveniste, Samuel Berenson, Philip Bernstein, Sheldon Berry, Muriel Brown, Walter Brunswick, Stephen Robert Buchwald, Estelle Sheffitz, Lillian D. Cloth, Jonathan Eric Cohen, Marshall Doctoroff, Leonard Dolberg, Robert Eisenberg, Martin Feuerman, Alice Fieberger Woodrow, Kenneth Wayne Fields, David A. Fisher, David Fishman, Gilbert Fleischer, Martin B. Gant, Barry Gersh, Jerry Gimelstob, Stephanie Glazer, Hannah Glick, Betty Jean Goldblum, Edith Gordon, Gertrude Green, Edith R. Greenspan, Ethel Greenspan, Claire Gruber, Kenneth I. Hershey, Eva Holtz, Gerald S. Jaffe, Doris Joseph, Nathaniel Klasfeld, Valerie Klein, Leona Krieger, Beverly Lambert, Sam Lapidus, Evelyn Leibowitz, Bud Levin, Francis Levine, Ravel Magid, Joseph Markfield, Herman Mervis, Joseph Meyerowitz, Abe H. Merman, Gisela Morgenstern, Fred Nuren, Mickey Nussbaum, Len Pedvis, Dita Pico, Harry Poritz, Michelle Pizzino, Sari Rakis, Ralph Rosengarten, Albert Rosenthal, Frank Philip Rothstein, Joseph Rubenstein, Samuel Sachar, Abraham Savell, Thelma Schaefer, Michael Shapiro, Benjamin Schumann, Owen Schwamm, Rose Schwartz, Esther Shear, Marie Sherman, Elsie Snyder, Richa Spielman, Minika Spielman, Ruth Stromberg, Irving Sussman, Harry Thal, Adam Michael Vigiano, David Joseph Vigiano Jr., Jacob Wasserman, Charlotte Weiner, Harry Weiner, Captain Samuel Whiteman, Myron Winston, Sylvia Wintner, Joyce Kravitz Wolf, Bertha Wolkoff, and Tanya Zalia. We add with sorrowing hearts those who are laid to rest in recent days, whose memories we cherish in the 30 days of Shaloshim. Herbert Littman, Shoshana Katz, Peter Posner, Norman Eidenberg, Jerry Yankow, Jerry Gold, Hillary Levine, Mitchell Datz, Jack Mandel, Efim Malamed, Jerry Stengel, Eloise Zweig, Hannah Chesnov, David Jaffe, Claire Edelman, Rhonda Lynch, and Jerome Dutz. We give thanks to God for the gift of life and the gift of love, together with the words of Kaddish. Together we say, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekucha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens grant peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who mourn. Together we say, Amen. Continue now singing together the words of Oseh Shalom as we pray for prayers of peace.
Oseh Shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh Shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
A few brief announcements. First, we want to offer Mazel Tov to Preston Gorandy and Mia Farber and their families on the celebration of their B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow. We're so excited for your celebrations. And on tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., join Rabbi Jessica Mates for our next installment of Torah study as we continue our beginning explorations of the book of Leviticus. Mark your calendars for Sunday, March 21st at 11 a.m. for our Cantor Evan Kent Artist in Residence series, Behind the Scenes, The Making of Shards. Cantor Kent will share with us a behind-the-scenes tour and look at the making, development, and production of his one-man show, Shards, as we continue exploring the spirituality of storytelling. Beginning on Monday, March 22nd, please participate in Temple Bethel's Passover food drive. Bring non-perishable items so that we can help those in need in our community as we support various food pantries in and around our community. Then on Saturday, March 27th at 6:00 p.m., join us for first night Seder of Passover, Hollywood by the Nile, a blockbuster virtual Passover Seder. Celebrate Passover the way you've never celebrated before. If you thought last year's Broadway Seder was cool, you won't want to miss this year's musical fun Seder featuring your favorite Hollywood hits, led by myself and Cantor Lori Brock. We're going to have so much fun. And then for families with little children, our second Seder on Sunday, March 28th at 5:30 p.m. will be led by Rabbi Weissman, our cantorial soloist, Michelle Oslander-Cohen, and our Director of Youth Engagement, Heather Ares, for a fun Seder geared towards families with little children. It's going to be a great second Seder. Then on Thursday, April 1st at 7 p.m., The Color of Love and The Color of Passover, our Women's Seder experience, an evening of reflection, song, and a conversation with author Mara Gad as we discuss her mixed-race adoption in 1970 and hear her experiences as a Black and white biracial Jewish woman. We'll get to hear her story interwoven with the Passover liturgies. It should be a beautiful evening, open to members and non-members alike. You can find this event and all the wonderful events at the Temple's website, tbeboca.org. If you click on Virtual Bethel, you can also find in our archives all of the programs that you may have missed. And lastly, please register for Temple Bethel's Bash. Live from Bethel, it's Saturday night, April 24th. We're going to have so much fun as we honor our COVID warriors and pandemic heroes, those who have stood on the front lines, those who have done so much to make a difference in this incredibly challenging and difficult year. Take an ad in our journal so that you can honor your personal COVID warrior or pandemic hero. And don't miss Idina Menzel, who is going to be performing a special concert just for us. More information also to be found on our website. And now please join me as we conclude with the Motzi. Motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom.